when Austin is playing Let's Play House, and remember, he's singing it. There's no auto-tune, he's singing that.
Right.
But when it gets crazy, we suddenly go to Gary Clark Jr. shredding like, you know, he's Jimi Hendrix. Because there's what it is, there's what it was, but there's also what it felt like. And my job as a storyteller is to let you, the audience, feel the way it was to be there.
Why can't you see what you're doing to me? When you don't believe a word I'm saying. We can't go on together with suspicious minds, and we can't build our dreams on suspicious minds. So if an old friend I know shove it up your nose just by to say hello, would I still see suspicion in your eyes?
That is what my boy would expect.
The suspicious mind.
Now? What are you going to pay me?
On suspicious mind.
Welcome to Behind the Lens today. Okay, so film, TV, opera, theater, music, recording, everything this guy does. His latest film, of course, the much acclaimed, very big box office hit, Elvis, named one of the 10 best films of the year by the AFI as we sit here and speak, which is great. Congratulations, Baz Luhrmann.
Thanks, Pete. I mean, it is great.
Well, you've been there before too with other films as well, and that's great to have all of this recognition now for this movie that opened in the spring. You know,
a long time ago, like from Cannes on, yeah.
And you've been talking about it ever since, probably.
Yeah, they're a bit like children, you know, like you. I mean, you know quite a bit about me. You know that I live the films, that I'm a serial collaborator, that I build these ensemble companies, these groups, and you know we hold the film collectively in our hands, and then the film gets born. For us, it was born in Cannes.
Yeah.
Cannes was what, May?
It was May. Yeah.
But like a child, it's born, but then you have to make sure it has a chance to grow up and go out in the world. So I'm almost ready to send the film off to college so it can fall in love with some random, you know, scruffy kid.
I have to tell you, you know how to do stuff in Cannes, because I have been to, I would say the two best parties I've ever been to in all the Cannes I've been to were Moulin Rouge, which that was unbelievable, and then Elvis, which lighting up the skies there, it was just unbelievable.
Well, you know, I mean, first of all, it's true we still have a bit of a record for that party in Cannes, because it was the first time that Thierry Frémaux took over the festival, and he wanted it to go a bit there. But I'll tell you something else. I mean, the art of the party, Leonardo da Vinci really wasn't that interested in painting. He had two great passions. He really loved building war machines, and he loved giving parties, but not going to them. And all my films tend around that. I mean, I like to go to parties, but I really like more just to, there's an art form in connecting people. And when you're opening a film, you want to connect people and say, well, it's a bit Dionysian, you know, like celebration.
That strikes me as a reason you may have been interested in doing Gatsby, too.
For sure.
Because he was certainly like that, too.
Yes, he was. He wasn't giving parties because he was a party animal.
Right.
He was giving parties. I mean, we find out later in the story that he's got this obsession with the green light and a love that cannot be put back together.
Yeah.
But he does the parties because he's drawing people in. He's drawing people to him. He's setting up a mythology and a kind of narrative that she might hear about across the river, you know, across the Long Island Sound, actually.
That reminded me, too. I was also at the party for Gatsby when it opened in Cannes, and it was a monsoon.
Monsoon.
It was like
blown away, and we had so many great. We had Ryan Ferry doing jazz and Florence performing, and the tent was all falling down around us. I mean, very Gatsby, I have to say. It was more Gatsby the third act than Gatsby the first act.
Right, totally. It was really, that was a fascinating one to go to. Everybody was sort of standing under things where you're not going to get wet. It was interesting.
And then we had a whole outdoor activation that we couldn't really do.
Yeah, amazing. So when I introduce you, I say all these things you do: film, TV, stage operas, theater, music, recording, movies, obviously, big movies, and how do you look at yourself in this business? What would you say?
I really think, from growing up in this very tiny country town of about 10 houses, you know, my dad did have the local cinema for a while. He did meet my mother through photography. I was just doing a picture for the magazine here, and I was holding a 16mm Bolex, which my father had and gave to me. I learnt to print on a box brownie. But I was also doing magic tricks, and I was also telling stories and making comics and things like that. So I feel like, if I look back, I always dealt in stories and ideas, and the medium or what they were in was kind of secondary. Like, do you know, the only thing I will say is that film calls upon you to use every discipline, unlike anything else. You know, I come from an acting teaching background, an ensemble of actors, the written word, the visual language, the musical language, then the mechanics of actually bringing a whole lot of people together to hold a pencil and draw a line. I didn't write that, David Lean did, but you know what I mean? It is a collective art form. And to me, I didn't make my shows in the little town on my own. I had my brothers involved, I got my friends involved. So I would maintain that I do now what I have always done, which is collectively tell story and deal in ideas.
Yeah. And 30 years since your first film, Strictly Ballroom. 30 years. Can you believe that?
I mean, we were on, I was in London. I had to be get up at 3 in the morning to be on the Australian version of the Australian Oscars. Right. And my brilliant wife was being honoured. And they had a retrospective on Strictly Ballroom, and yes, it was 30 years ago. I mean, it seems just like yesterday.
It does, right?
Right.
I mean, you know, time flies and all that, and congratulations on all the Australian awards, too.
Thank you. So gratifying because actually so much of our long-term collaborators, I mean, of course, there's the miracle of Austin Butler and Tom Hanks, but someone like Richard Roxburgh or David Wenham or a Grip or, you know, people we've worked with for 30 years. Or 20 years, these deep collaborations, you know.
Yeah, it's amazing. And of course, you know, I love the movie Australia, which I think you're still fiddling with.
Well, here's the paradox of Australia.
Yeah.
When I looked back at it, there's no question that I was probably pressurized to finish it in a way in which I wasn't entirely happy with. But then I'm not entirely happy with any movie I've ever made. Right. But what's so strange is it didn't do well here in the US. It's my only film that didn't do well, but it's my biggest movie still in Europe, by far. What I have done, though, is it's not that I've gone like, oh, I'm finally getting it right. But in the same way like a Debussy might do variations on a Satie, I really was able to relook at it. I had the material, but I didn't just do a director's cut. I actually reinterpreted some of it, did some of the plot work that I really felt I was intrigued to see what would happen. And the great thing I've done is I've used all these new young indigenous pop artists to do really great new music all the way through the film as well. So it's significantly different, but it is the same creature.
How is it going to be presented?
6 episodes, some very short and some longer. The other thing was you know, looking at streaming, Elvis is, you know, 230, 240, right? It's a sitting, you know, one sitting. And yes, even with Jim's epic film, 3 hours, right? That's okay, it's a sitting. But large novels suit, or large epic pieces suit episodic telling. So I thought, why not, finally, if we're going to look at streaming, why not exploit it for its nature, which is episodic telling? Like Dickens wrote in episodes. You know, Oliver Twist was written in episodes, and it went on very long. So
it's going to be, but that's a really interesting thing to do. Are there any other films you'd like to go back and sort of like?
Not really, no, because the other films, by their very nature, I mean, one thing I will say, because I might as well say this, because there's so much noise around it. There isn't a 4-hour version of Elvis. There's 4 hours of material.
Right.
But there's definitely the potential, not now, not next year, but because Austin, when we did those, we spent so much time. Like Mandy Walker, the DP, who, congratulations, she broke the glass ceiling, was the first woman ever on Elvis to win the DP award in Australia.
Yeah.
And that glass ceiling hasn't been broken at BAFTA or Oscar.
No.
You know, so I was really so happy for her. But she spent so much time recreating the lenses and the positions and even putting modern cameras inside the TV cameras in the comeback special.
It's amazing.
To get exact copies of what we did. Well, in that Vegas performance, Austin, we covered everything from Austin walking backstage, just like in the This Is It.
Right.
You know, that's the way it is, documentary. Elvis walks on stage, and Austin does the full 3 numbers with patter, and it was an out-of-body experience. I had a grip who comes up to me, worked with me 30 years, and he goes, "Mate, Baz, I've worked on the Star Wars. I did the Thin Red Line with Terry Malick, and you know, I've done it all, the Supermans, but I've never experienced anything like that, mate. My hands were shaking. I think I might have shaken the camera." And the truth is, we were all shaking because it was so real that we couldn't do our work.
Right.
And I think one day I want to let those concert sequences play out.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. Austin is so great. You know, such a great.
He's a miracle, actually.
Yeah, such a great discovery to put in that role.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes an actor just meets the role, and he's met it pretty early in his career here with this. And
well, yeah, he's just turned 30, and you know, I think he was 25 when I met him. That's how long it takes me to do a movie. But I will say this: look, you cannot. I mean, Denzel Washington famously rings me, who I don't know, and says, "You're about to meet a young actor whose work ethic is like nothing I've seen before." I mean, he actually said that.
Yeah.
And when Austin came into our world and he started the training day and night, and there was just never, I mean, he slept about 3 hours a day. But I'll tell you something, Pete, when we got the word, I was in the middle of it, we were about to shoot.
Right.
And the AD says to me, "I think Tom Hanks has that flu."
Yeah.
And now the world knows what that was.
Oh, that was crazy. That broke our deadline. That was,
it did. Actually, it was, I remember.
It broke it.
What happened is, I'm telling you, guys on hazmat suits grab us. They put me into the estate where we've got the grandparents. We're in lockdown, and I saw it on deadline.
Yeah.
And maybe the comment was like, now the world will take it seriously. If Tom Hanks can get it, anyone can.
That's right.
So what happens is, we lose the movie. I couldn't hold the film together. And Tom was suffering, and he put out great messages, and he goes back to the US. And I said to Austin, I think you should go back to the US because I don't think the film's going to happen right now.
Right.
What I was saying was, maybe not. And I rang Tom, and Tom said, "Well, look, would it be over in February?" And I found out, I said, "I don't think it is." And really bravely, he said, "I'll come back. Can we get it done by Christmas?" And he came back, and Austin said, "I'm not leaving." And he wouldn't leave, and he kept doubling down, even though the film was over.
Right.
He kept working. And when Tom came back, everybody in that crew, every actor, the ensemble we built, held that movie like a precious baby, and incredibly, Pete, that film was the smoothest shoot I've ever had. It came in on time and under budget. And, you know, that doesn't always happen with me.
Right.
But,
especially in the middle of a
pandemic. It was actually a miraculous achievement because, you know, we had all those protocols and everything, and yet the feeling of everyone involved in that movie, that we had a mission greater than making a movie.
Right.
We had to show that the show could go on. And we had an aim. I got the studio, I said, "I'm not making this movie if it goes straight to streaming.
Oh, yeah.
It has to be in the theaters."
Yeah. Well, last year, Warner's had that thing going on with a lot
they had us kind of wrapped up in that, and I said, "I'm not doing it."
Ah, that's interesting.
And they pushed it, and I said, "I need a double window." So they agreed.
Yeah.
And I then had to deliver one thing. which there was a lot of fear and trepidation, and I understand. I had to deliver older audiences, not I. We had to deliver older audiences. We had to get them to be driven enough to want to see it, that they were fearless enough to come into the theaters, and younger audiences, and that's why we got the number. You know, we were the #1 picture that's non-sequel.
No, huge. Although I talked to you for a couple of interviews on the Warner's lot before it opened, and there was nervousness. Will they come? You were wondering, are they going to show up because they haven't been going to theaters?
Absolutely. You know what? I suppose, despite the perception, the out there selling part, I wouldn't say it's not my favorite part. It's, you know what I mean? It's like, as you say, I'm still doing it and I could be getting on with me or something. But with everyone that gave so much to this movie, I think I said to you then, and I certainly said to the exhibitors, I mean, being the son of a theater owner, I stood on that stage in Vegas and I looked up to those, 3,000 people, mums and pops, some of them who own cinemas, and I said, look, there's nothing I won't do to try and encourage audiences to brave going back into the theater. And, we went to Arizona. The whole time, we all went, Austin and I, on one day, we were in Toronto. We did opening and interviews and everything we needed to do. We went right to Arizona. We did the same thing, and we went to Los Angeles on the one day. You know what? Because for everyone who gave so much, we wanted to prove that audiences do want to sit in dark rooms with strangers and be moved and laugh and cry. That they need that. That's part of the human condition. And no matter how powerful streaming, and I love what streaming can do, but no matter how powerful, like when television was invented, movies just got bigger. Movies just got more movie.
It was interesting. I was having dinner with somebody the other night, and his wife sat there and said, I don't like many movies I'm seeing right now, but there's something about Elvis. She's seen it 4 times, and she doesn't see anything like that.
Will you thank her for me?
Well, because it was just like out of the blue, It's sort of living on. I look at the number of years between your movies here, and you spend a lot of time. You're kind of like David Lean in that way. You come back 5 years later and you got another movie. Is that purposeful, or it just takes you that long to really get to the point where you want to go and stand on a soundstage?
Well, I know a lot about Lean. He was my great hero, him, Kubrick, Wells. One thing I think, I don't think I choose this, but Lean, they live the movies. Like, I think, if you look at Kubrick's research on Napoleon, I mean, like me, and I don't do this on purpose, but I could live the research period, the imagining period. I get into character. I wear the clothes. I lived in Memphis. I had an office in Gracelands for 18 months. I searched down that little boy that's in the tent scene, and he told me it. Like, I could do that forever and not make the movie. But also, when I do go to make the movie, it's in me, there's the script, and there's a visual script, and there's a musical script. But I see myself as a serial collaborator. I'm at the center of a huge ensemble of creative artists. And my job is to keep fear out of the circle. And in the middle of the set, we're super prepared. We've got a super evolved script. But if someone said to me, dun, 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 I've lived it. So I don't have to go to notes and, I'm living it. So yeah, I think the time between movies is, one, I want to make sure that they're, on the one hand, very personal, and I have an obsession that once I've taken the indulgence of making a personal choice, that I'm the least indulgent about connecting it with the broadest possible audience. That's what's important to me, because that's what we do. That's the theater. I make theatrical movies for the theater, and the theater just means an environment that brings different people from different kinds together.
You really make theatrical movies for the theater, because Moulin Rouge is never going to end, It was just here, and I saw it in New York. There's
one rehearsing in Japan and Korea. Can't wait to see that one.
just adapts to the stage. I don't think you were directly involved with it.
I was Uncle Baz, or Grandfather Baz. Do you know the thing about being a granddad is you can have the kids, it's really fun, but you have none of the work. I just used to sit there with gin and tonic going, kids, it's going great, continue. But I just chose a younger Alex Timbers, who in a way was kind of a younger me. I mean, I don't want to try and be me 20 years ago. Right. I want to hand it on. I don't want to be one of those older dudes who's always trying to say, don't touch it, it's a holy grail. It's not a holy grail, right? It's storytelling, and I want a younger person, when I'm not here on this planet, to take Moulin Rouge and interpret it in a different way, in different times, with different music. I support that.
Oh, that's great, yeah. So you're not Norma Desmond here, lost in the reveries of...
Well, the thing with Norman is she doesn't look that good coming down the stairwell, does she? Gloria, I'm ready for my close-up. No.
What do you want to do now? I'm always curious what you come. You look at the films, just the films, but everything you do. Puccini, La Boheme, and and all those projects. They're big. They're very recognizable kind of subjects that people will go to.
You hope they'll go to them.
Well,
it's not always guaranteed.
No, but it's interesting, and Gatsby and Moulin Rouge. These are big names, and Romeo and Juliet.
But they are. But let me just say one thing, Pete, because I've been thinking about this myself. Actually, after the fact, people think that, but going in, nobody wants to see a Shakespeare really in the cinema in a Broadway.
Really?
I mean, like no one said like, oh, a 100-year-old Gatsby book. Can't wait to see that. These things were difficult. Certainly. People I trust said the musical will never be popular again. Right. This is 21 years ago.
Right. That's interesting too. And then you have people coming out when that movie comes out who have made these classic musicals like Robert Wise and others. I remember, and they are saying you reinvented it.
Honestly, there's a few things in my life that have happened that have truly touched me. But when Moulin Rouge came out, and it was you'd think I'd made a sort of splatter film. I mean, the amount of controversy about whether this was crazy or right. But when those classic artists who made musicals came out, I mean, an artist who made Singing in the Rain, a director, or Weiss, or people that made actual musicals came out and said...
Stanley Donen,
Stanley Donen. I mean, when he came out and said, I'd done that, I have never felt more useful than those moments.
That's the best kind of
that's everything.
Review you could ever get, I guess. Does that matter to you, what critics say?
I mean, of course you feel it. I don't feel it so much for myself. I feel for everyone who I've led down the road when they're attacked, okay?
Yeah.
And look, there are great critics who are really helpful, and there are people who maybe less keen on doing their homework and quicker to the bar or something, I don't know. But I tell you what, I also accept that when you work outside the box or you have your own language, like, I'm not saying I'm Kubrick. I think I might have glibly said I'm the Stanley Kubrick of confetti, but I don't mind it. But the point is that I think the storytellers, not only that I admire, but that I am stuck with, because I can't extract myself from the way I tell stories. But for me, there is a very thought through method to the madness in trying to disarm audiences, engage with them on these really kind of boring, rusty subjects.
And make it new again. And make it vital for these audiences seeing it. There was no question to me in the early scenes in Elvis where he's got the pink suit on and your camera is focusing on the leg moves and everything like that. There you really do, and cutting to the audience and everything, you really do get the feeling of what it must have been.
Well, that's right. I mean, look, you've been to a BTS concert. I saw them at Citi Field, and I heard what is called keening. This is like, tens of thousands of young girls, maybe some boys too, but keening is not screaming. It's an out-of-body experience. I mean, when Marion Kaiska gets up in the scene I've shot and screams, she says in her biography, I went to the first time Elvis ever walked on stage, and I shushed all these young girls, stop screaming. And the next thing, there was this middle-aged woman standing up going, "Rah!" And I realized it was me. Now you understand that Elvis had this effect, and I think we explore it because of that Pentecostal background, because of his spiritual.
Yeah.
He would get in such a state that audiences wanted to eat him alive, literally.
It's amazing. By the way, before we go, I did receive in the mail a little while ago the soundtrack album, remember those, record,
right.
And with a beautiful note from Priscilla Presley. You know.
I mean,
she is really supporting this in a big way.
You know what? You talked about Robert Weiss and the great musical directors saying something nice, that being a great review. The second most important review, maybe the most important review. You know, I met Priscilla early, but we got estranged. And rightly so, and I always double down and say, I totally understand why she was saying, how can this skinny kid really play Elvis? No one can be Elvis.
Right.
And what was Baz going to do with my life? When we were going to Cannes, I had to screen it. And the plane is late,
right.
And I ring in, and the security guard says, oh, was female, was crying. Did she run screaming from the theater?
Yeah.
No, she's still in there crying. And the email I got from her, she said a lot of beautiful things in it, but she said, you know what, I'm sorry I was so hard on you. And she said, who is that boy? Like, how did he do that? Every wink, every move, every eye. She said, if my husband was here, he would say, hot damn, you are me. And I'm telling you what, from that moment on, and same with Lisa Marie and Riley, from that moment on, we were embraced by the family. We'd go down to Graceland and have a barbecue and, you know, cocktails in the jungle room. And, I mean, that is a royal family that is, I think, been rightly able to reclaim their position in popular culture. Yeah. And it's been beautiful to see.
Certainly this helps too. Well, thank you for joining us on Behind the Lens, and it's fascinating. I still don't know what your next project is, but I'll let you keep it.
Me neither. I'll let you know first to tell you.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Baz Luhrmann, thank you.
Thanks.